always grateful to help in any way I can and pour into people any way I can and give my heart and anything I've learned, obviously, the best of my abilities. Yeah, I came here, for those of you who don't know my story, basically 5 years ago, which is crazy to me that it's been 5 years. But the end of 2009, I talked to Andrew Taylor April of 19. We spoke. I was another company for 19 years. I was an agency owner, went through all the, sales and, did well there. I've always done well in comparison to most in places I've been. That's not about me. It's just that one thing I realized I could do is show up every day, have a good attitude, and work my tail off. And not the most gifted by any means or anything like that, best looking, none of that stuff. But one thing I could do is work. I can control that. And I was given a platform that's second to none, still is to this day, only better in my mind. April of night, or I went with my wife and we prayed about it. Um, and it was October of 19. I wrote my first policy right at the end of September, 1st of October. I did submitted over 60K my first month. Never called leads before, never sold life insurance per se at any high level. We had a product at the company I was with, but we were a supplemental company. I knocked on doors for 19 years. And then when I was an agency owner, I taught people how to do that and went in the car with them, all that stuff, right? I did well there. We had a good living. We've had four daughters. I have six grandkids now. I like to say I'm more like a 25-year-old than I'm a 55-year-old. But I worked hard over there. I did well there per se, but I left because I thought of the opportunity better. I left a lot of money on the table. It was a big risk for my family. And so when I did that, I wasn't going to, not go all in. And I listened to what Andrew told me. I listened to what Sean did, and I just did exactly what they told me to do. Went to convention. It changed my life. There's my plug. I'm sure most of you are all registered. For us, it was about 2,500 people there. I remember Easton and Vegas at that time, and we were at Hollywood, playing Hollywood. And I remember I went into a room and there was 50 people in the room, and I was number 51. I was just invited in. I didn't even know what sales manager was. Uh, I remember going there and I submitted over 100K my first 3 months, and I think I missed the actual IP by like a few dollars. It wasn't much. I saw these people going across stage 100. I was like, man, I was impressed, and went all the way up to I think Giordano and a couple other guys at that time. He hadn't hit a million yet, but I was touched in that I was not going to be in that room and not be. I wasn't coming back the same, right? I left there. I knew I could follow Sean. I saw the Dream Center. That really hit me because of my church and some connections there that I knew about Pastor Matthew. I've learned a lot since then. This last Hall of Fame dinner, he said something that blew me away about the rain and all that. He was almost not there. And he was there. And there was a reason he was there. He was there for me. See, that's how I look at it. Every meeting I go to, I'm there for me, right? And he was there for me. And I left there and went all in with this business and led from the front, like he said, Hall of Fame. We were ability, the one thing is I don't think anybody, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying the way we did it, I would have to brought an army of people with me to do $1 million in that short period of time. I didn't do that. But the way we do things now is a little bit different, the way we structure things. But dude, I just listened, man. I went to Andrew Taylor, and one of the things I've learned in life is no matter how good we think we are or how much we think we know, if it's something different, you got to listen to the ones that have done it before you, right? And so I did exactly what he told me to do. He told me to dial the phone. Now we were in the field at the time, and Mondays, Thursdays, dial the phone and run business Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, if need be, and so on. I'll never forget this. I'll share this quick story with you, but I'll never forget. I was on a Zoom and I got on Dominic's Zoom. That was my first Zoom I was ever on, and Easton was on there. I'll never forget it. And he used to like dial in these dark rooms and sit back in a chair. You could see his hat. And I remember Zach being on there, and I didn't know them. They're super good friends of mine now, but Zach and I are really close. But it's like, I remember seeing them going, who is this guy? Like, who's this young guy? And he was just killing it. And I'll never forget, I used that one thing you used to say, I got to make sure you're not strapped to a hospital bed. I use that every call from that point forward. I heard Easton say that. So anyway, that's kind of how I started. We grew a big agency. We were blessed to have great people. Our motto is heart, faith, and hustle. So I try to pour for people my heart every day. My faith is my faith, and you got to have faith in yourself, and then hustle. You got to work hard. So that's kind of the way I see things. But That's kind of what I would say. I think we have the best opportunity in America, period. Um, Being in the business for over 27 years, because with one other company prior to that, also knocking on doors. Um, and so I know what's here is amazing. It's amazing to see somebody like Gabby come out in a short period of time and be able to write $80,000 in a month. And another guy you had on there 16. I don't remember all the numbers. You guys are killers. And you got a killer leader. I know I say that, but you already know that. What's up, Jake? Another one of my dudes. It's good to see your face, bro. So we've had some good times together too, right, Jake? I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah. Anyway,
There we
good
go.
to see,
Absolutely, dude.
good to see the
Thanks for
Savages.
jumping on.
Yeah, man. Anytime. So guys, any questions you have? I mean, I can tell you what we do a lot of vet leads now. I work Mel and I sell together. He's a savage. Help him a little bit. He does more than I do, honestly, between recruiting and but I am still selling some. I think we're at about, I don't know, I think 270 for the year, something like that myself. When I say we, you'll notice I'll say we a lot because that's how I believe in it. It's a we thing, it's not a me thing. And I think that if we all have that attitude, we just win better together. So
Well, dude, I wouldn't mind unpacking how the hell you survived hitting doors for 19 years without leads. So I think that that says a lot about like your willingness to pursue through hard stuff because that is I'm 100% promising you I never would have done that because I did cold marketing for like a year and a half at my corporate job and I was like, "Oh, this actually sucks really bad. I'm not doing that anymore." So when you are bringing new people in now and they're like, "Hey, this is kind of hard. Like I've had to make some phone calls from my house and not actually like leave or do anything." How do you kind of without, being disrespectful or rude maybe go like, "Hey, this is actually a better way because this is how it used to be from like paper apps to hitting doors. Now we just can gen leads call from our office. We don't even have to like fly anywhere anymore." How do you like set standard structure and like help somebody get up and running with a good attitude?
well, that's a great question. I think it's just setting expectations up front, setting expectations there's going to be failure, setting expectations that it's not easy, you know. Can it become easy? Yes, as you get better at it. When I say easy, easy compared to other things that we could do to make the amount of money that we make here, right? But how hard is it to talk to people every day, really? How hard is it to pick up the phone? It's not hard. It's all mental, really. So I think that's the key for me. I really spend a lot of time on that with people just because I it's like I heard Ed Milet say this. Sometimes you say things and you stop saying those things because other people have heard it. There's a reason why you repeat yourself, right? And so for me, the message has really never changed. It's work hard, be teachable, be coachable, follow the blueprint. Follow what other people are doing, they're being successful. Why deviate from that plan when it works, right? I'm not saying we don't make small adjustments along the way. The other thing is, it's more, you got to have more discipline in my mind to be at home, especially if you're not in an office, because there's so many distractions, right? If you have kids or you have that, obviously super important. There's just things going on at the house, right? It's easy to say, I'm done, and walk in the room and I mean, watch TV. Not that I would do that. I'm just saying you could, right? So I think a lot of people say I dialed 8 hours. Well, did they really? So holding them accountable with their dials, making sure that hopefully they're tracking that because I think otherwise, how do we find out what their batting average is? How do we find out how many leads they need? How do we find out, I think it's also digging in and figuring out, how much they're willing to work. Every situation is different. Some people want to make X and other people want to make Y, right? It's figuring out each family situation. I think every person that comes to this business has different goals, different desires, and different needs to be met. So it's figuring out what that looks like. Because if I hire somebody and they're only, working 30, 40 hours a week, that's different than the person, say, Gabby, who worked whatever she worked this week, is probably more than that, right? And then people look at the outside and go, how are they doing that kind of numbers? Well, they're investing more, they're spending more time dialing the phone, and it's just an attitude thing. So to me, it's so important to have the right attitude about what we do, and having a servant's heart also helps, because if you really do that, guys, and I'm just saying, like, that works for me. That's what gets me out of the bed to this day. It's not me. I'm fine. And if I used to tell my wife this, I remember Easton, real quick story. I was driving home. You guys remember this day. It was probably a couple years ago. Remember, I went back in the field for a minute, and I remember driving home, and I'd written like 7 grand that day and 10 for a couple days. And I called my wife and I said, if this integrity thing doesn't work out, this was right before integrity, like about 6 months or so. I remember telling her I could go make $10,000 any week I wanted for the rest of my life. I had to. I knew I could do that. So there's some peace knowing that you have that skill that you can go do. And so I want to remind you of that when you're going through tough times. Where else are you going to go to make even close to the amount of money you're seeing people make? Now, you got to manage it correctly, right? That's the other thing, Easton, is I also am very adamant about, Jake, matter of fact, I remember when you were down in Charlotte about 2 years ago or so, I remember that was my mission, was to tell people that, and I've never let up on that, which is treat your business like a business from day one. Like the money is not yours, it's your business. Okay. Because if you don't treat it that way, you'll be out of business. You know, she made 80 grand, but the question is, and I'm sure she's good. I'm just saying she's probably not going to spend it all. You know what I mean? She's going to keep some in her account, pay her bills, right? Invest back in with the leads, what she needs if she's recruiting, whatever. But keep that in that business and build that account up. Andrew used to tell me to get to 25,000. I don't know that I ever did that. Because I invested so much back into the business to help it grow. Now, eventually it did because it got crazy with the bonuses and things of that nature. But hopefully that helps and answers your question. But it's making sure they understand the discipline they have to have. And, they got to be self-motivated either way in this business. It's not our, and since they're not in the office, well, now if they're in the office, it's different. They got to show up and you're there and there's more accountability. But on the phone, if you're at home, you got to have that set parameters in place with your family. Talk to the kids, tell them, hey, dad's busy and I need this amount of time so we can go do this later. Have those conversations with your wife. That's one thing I did tell my wife is I needed 2 years to change our life. And I wasn't going to let up. And I still do that, but it just looks a little different for me now.
Yeah, that falls into your expectations. It needs to be done at home in a lot of cases as well. You know, different if you're flying solo, being a little, young hooligan, but if you have a family and stuff, you probably want to have that conversation sooner than later. Two things that stuck out, Dave. You nonchalantly said like, hey, if you're only going to work 30 to 40 hours, which is like one of my favorite things of all time, because I think that is a great way to look at, if you have like big visions, big goals, and you're used to working 30 to 40 hours at a regular job, insane that you wouldn't be willing to at least do that here. But you're basically going, hey, if you're only going to work this amount of hours a week, then don't expect to be in this high multiple six-figure income bracket because you're just working a regular hours. You're not doing anything different or special, even though this is a good vehicle, especially if you don't have a skill set. So expectations for like, if you want to have a month like, Gabby and like the chef has had, like, you're gonna have to probably do 70, 80, 90 plus hours a week. And if you don't want that, it's all good. Nobody's gonna, judge or be weird to you, but like, don't expect big stuff to not run the same schedule that all these top producers are. And then metrics. I think metrics are everything because it gives somebody who's getting started trackable data. So I know you talked about dials. Is there any other like, hey, for you guys, this is what you need to see so that you can kind of guide, direct, and aim that you think all new agents should be tracking regularly?
Well, I mean, hours. I mean, you could track hours, you could track dials. I mean, I think again, it's case by case basis. I think personally, it's having those conversations from day one and finding out going back to what I was saying, find out what their actual goals are. Because if Gabby's 80, but somebody else is, 20 in the hours, we gotta talk to them differently, right? Because her goals are bigger and, setting those expectations, which I'm sure you have. I mean, she knows how much work it does take to get where she's at. And she's also has that experience now. She can turn around and give to someone else. Hey, this is what I did. This is how I did it. And she has proof. And we call it, yeah. So I think it's having that proof helps. And so that's where it's going to come from. The dials, the hours, the days, all that. But it's really starts with communication, right? I mean, they have to be able to communicate what they've done or what they haven't done. The other thing is you can't lie, because if you lie, how am I going to coach you? It's easy, and that's easy to do in the virtual world. But if I was in the office, I can see whether you're working or whether you're not working. Now, the numbers do show up, but I mean, some people will get lucky sometimes and they'll have a good, you create your own luck, but I'm just saying they could get they could work, I don't know, say 40 hours, but have a week that looks like maybe they put more in, right? And then they go back the next week and realize, well, I still have to do more. Um, I think consistency is huge. I think it's also telling them, telling them, but teaching them about time off and being smart with that, especially if they're really trying to build some income and build a business. You got to watch how much time you take off. And again, I'm not saying that you don't take that purposeful time with your family, your spouse, your kids, but lay out that groundwork ahead of time. I don't know if that helps you. But I mean, schedule's everything. So if you stick to the schedule and commit to it, I know one thing, if it's on the schedule, it gets done. If it's not on the schedule, it's not going to get done. Right. And I think some of us will hesitate to put things on the calendar for that reason. All right. Because we're scared of hard work. We're scared of, hey, I got to work a couple extra hours because that's there. There's lots of things that we go through in our hearts and our minds that, hey, I don't have to do this. But if it's on the calendar, you should, right? So I don't know, man, calendar, because then you can look at it month to month with each individual, week to week, however you want to do it, and then you can coach them based on that. So I think a schedule, having them give you what hours they actually work those days, how many calls they made, if you want to do calls. I don't know if it's necessarily calls, maybe the lead investment, how much are they, what leads are they using in the lead investment can be a piece of it. Because again, if I look at, use Melvin as an example, you know, he does, I don't know, 60, 70, 80K a month, whatever it is. He has a big lead investment, right? So we have to talk about that. And some people are scared to do that and they're not ready. But if we can get them, you know, that 15 to 20, and then they understand the money and how it works and how that goes back to keeping that money over there. That's another thing too. Are we transparent? And we could look at their bank account with them. Some people don't know how to do a lot of things. Like they don't know how to manage their money. Dude, I wasn't the best at it, dude. I could always build businesses and go to work. My wife is great at it. Thank God. So she still handles the books, you know, this day. I go to work, I make the money and help people. She helps me on the backside and keeps me straight. So if you don't have whatever you're lacking in structure or skill, you can always hire somebody to help you with that. Right. And don't be, I mean, I remember Easton early on, like Gabby, I don't know her situation, but dude, she may can do more if she wanted to, or build a business because all she's got the money, right? Now it's what do I do with that money? Maybe it's maybe it's hire a recruiter to help her build a team. Maybe it's maybe she has $1, I don't know. Maybe she has another dollar. I mean, there's certain things you can do with that money to help you even grow more. And some people, when they realize, I remember early on paying somebody $500 a week, which is nothing, to help me do basic things that would keep me selling were more important. And I always made it up. Does that make sense? I don't know if that helped you.
Yeah, that's great, dude. And Ty had a question just about like, hey, what's Dave's daily schedule look like? Like how do you rumble top down during the day?
Right now or before? Um, I
How
don't
about
know.
Little Beach? How about peak selling and building while you're getting everything off the ground, like that crazy 12 months? And then like how is that since you guys grew? Maybe how is your schedule adjusted or tailored a little bit out now at the next level of business?
For about a 2 year period, really, I got up between 4 and 4:30, right, Jake and Easton. I mean, I was very purposeful in my posting, um, purposeful with Discord. You know, we use Discord now, but back then, I think it was Slack or whatever. Purposeful, making sure I was in front of my people all the time. But when you get up at 4:30, you're getting ahead of a lot of people, right? Now it's more like 5 for me. I'm in the gym by around 5:30 or so, and you know, that's something I've always done is stayed into fitness because number one, it's the time that I get my mind right every day. Um, but dude, during that time, my wife used to say I worked 120 hours. I don't know if it was that, but you got to understand, I never shut it off. So I was working in the field, like I said, running Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday every single week. And there was never a set schedule other than I needed to make sure I had 7, 8 appointments on those days, right? And then Saturday was one of those days where I probably did 1 or 2 Saturdays a month in the beginning. But even if I wasn't in the field, I was taking calls in the field, I was helping agents, I was recruiting all day pretty much until later in the afternoon, most Saturdays. Sunday was the day I went to church and stuff like that. But the truth is, I actually went to my pastor and say I told him the same thing. I had to step back from some duties at church so I could do more for them later on, which we did do. But my daily routine was I got up at 4:30. I was in the gym. I was probably done by 6:30, something like that. And then I was in the office every single day on the dial days by 7, dialing by 7:30. And I did that 2 days a week. As far as running goes, being that I was up at 4 o'clock, I didn't care if I talked to somebody who, if he said, "Hey, I was getting off of his job," and I said, "Well, I'll meet you at 6," and they'd be like, "6?" Like, "Yeah, do you drink coffee in the morning?" Like, "Yeah." Okay, so I'd go to their house at 6 or 7 in the morning. I didn't care because I was already up anyway, right? Now, one thing I did do with final expense, it allowed me to not have to work 9, 10 o'clock a lot of nights. Whereas if I was doing mortgage protection, on the other hand, I would have to work a little later, right? But the bottom line is I wanted to submit, and this is crazy. So when I started, 30K was big, 40K, right? So when I started, Andrew said I submitted 10K every single week, and I did it 50 out of 52 weeks my first year. And the 2 weeks that I didn't do it, which I didn't get into a big deal, but they were quote unquote vacations that we had built into our schedule for my family and my wife every year, non-negotiable for her, you know what I mean, kind of thing. But the truth is, even on those days and those weeks, I was still working, doing some stuff in the mornings and things. And dude, I was all in. Man, I started in this business, guys. My first interview in this business, the guy told me if I worked 40, 50 hours a week, I would be successful. I asked him what I wanted, what would I do with the other 40 to 50. He looked at me like I was crazy. But dude, in my early 20s, I worked 3 jobs. I sold cell phones. I built another business on the side, and I tossed newspapers in the middle of the night because it's the only time I could find another time to make money. And then I found this, and I was like, wow, that I can go and work minimum 8 hours, but 12, 14 hours and change my life every single day. Hopefully that gives you my schedule is this is what I do. This is all I do. Like, I have my wife and my kids, we schedule time in there, but I still work. I don't work 100 hours a week. I'll just be honest. I probably work, I don't know, 60, 70 maybe. When I say 60, 70, I may not be in the office the whole time, but I'm on the phone or answering a call or texting or whatever. There's other things that we have to do outside of the office. You know what I mean? So I never shut it down completely.
Yeah, which is great. And Sean talked about that too. I remember, man, one of our first meetings when I had met him, he's like, the day that you bring somebody else into your business is the day that you give up the right to be mediocre, which means you have to answer your phone when you don't want to, you have to show up when you don't want to sometimes, and you just have to like be willing to be around. And he's like, if you don't feel like it, that's no longer a thing for you anymore. Because nobody cares, like you gotta show up for your people, basically, was the message that he had delivered to us. So having your business phone on 7 days a week, like, welcome to the show, dude. That's what it's like to be in any business ever, especially getting something off the ground and managing at a high level. You can't just, dude, my enterprise boss, great example. He was at the highest peak that he's a GM of CO, making $3 to $4 million a year, crushing it, still answering phone calls from like entry-level managers on every single Sunday. He never still had a day off. And he was just at a corporate job, but he's a big player. So it's like, it doesn't really matter where you go. If you're operating at a high level, you probably got to have your phone a lot and be willing to do, maybe it's annoying or uncomfortable, but like, dude, you got to show. So, and you have done that. I mean, just as good, if not better than anybody, dude. So, I really appreciate you sharing. Hey, if you guys want to sneak a little question in for Dave while we got him, I'm going to let this thing, I'm pretty sure everybody can unmute and let her rip. Let's see, Darlene had a great question for you, which you let me know your feedback on this. How much did you invest into leads when you started? I always say it varies depending on the person's situation. So I guess, like, where would you get people off the ground at, scale to top producer?
Well, when I was in the field, we were probably doing 1,500 to 2,000 a week, something like that. But I realized, if I could trade 2 grand for 10 every week, I would do it. But I'm not sure I tracked that really good. I'm just being honest. I got leads when I needed leads. I never let that be a reason why I wasn't going to win. Right. So I think everybody's different. You got to kind of figure that thing out. But, you know, what is your goal? Is it to submit 10? Is it submit 15? Is it submit 20? You got to start with the submit, because if it doesn't get submitted, then you can't issue it. Right. I mean, we have an issue number. I get it. But if I want to issue 70, I probably need to submit 80 or so, right? Whatever the number is. But I think every person's different. I mean, I think if someone says they want to write 40, they probably need to be investing around that number, probably 2 grand a week or so, 1,500 to 2 grand, I'd say. There's different lead systems out there and things like that. Depends on the leads, I guess, but that would be my thing. I think it's a minimum 1,500 to 2 grand is probably going to get you where you need to be, get you that 40 mark or so. Um, but again, I think it's just a case by case basis and a situation. I was never afraid of using my credit card that I had. I came here with not a lot of, because I'd been through a divorce, just being transparent, and my wife and we didn't have a lot of credit. We were still working through a lot of that stuff, but I was able to change my life even without integrity, guys. I'm just sharing this as a positive. I was able to change my life within a year and a half, where my credit score was, hey, I could barely buy a house to buy anything I wanted. Okay. So if some of you are in that situation, it will change, but you have to stay the course and learn, and you're going to get better. Every time you fail, you just get better, right? You mentioned reinventing myself. Like when I first came here, I realized I had to go back to what I knew in the beginning, which was, I don't know anything. Tell me what to do, and I'm going to go do that.
Yeah,
And so
coachability, dude, that's a
homework
big
to
piece.
do that. Yeah. So whatever's working, Easton knows how to do it, right? Jake knows how to do it. Obviously, Gabby knows how to do it. What are they doing, and duplicate that. If it's a lead cost, ask.
Hey, another question about, are you guys as an agency primarily running vet leads? Are you still doing a little bit of a mix? Or are you guys pretty vet heavy now?
A lot of our guys do run vet, some FEX, but I think the guys that are doing really well do vets, and some IULs are mixed in there now. I think even Noel and I do a little bit of that. He does more than I do with those, but yeah, I think that's something that, people should learn, because I think do persistency and different things about it. But we can also find those running mortgage leads and vet leads too. I mean, you can find that stuff anywhere. Just got to ask the right questions, right? I think that's the thing about leads. I think sometimes we get caught up in, it's this type of lead. The truth is, if we ask the right questions, we can find the needs that they actually need, because it might be final expense. It might be an IUL. It might be they need to cover their house. It might be they need their children covered. They may have money sitting over here. Do you have $10,000 anywhere else that can help bury you? Yes. Oh, where's that at? I mean, so I think we got to be smarter and just ask questions, not assume just because they're a vet they have no money, or if it's a mortgage lead that they really just need to cover their house. They may have money to cover their house, but if we don't ask the question, we don't know.
Love that, dude. Okay, so let's go into the next one. Brandon, another good question, and it took me 15 months to actually leave my corporate job and come over here. So how did you push through and navigate that fear of quitting your old job and just saying, I'm going to come here? You didn't really have an issue. If you were going to make the decision, you were going to go all in no matter what. But how did you, I guess, push through that like wall of, dude, I'm out and I'm just going to say, whatever it is that you said under your breath, like, let's do it.
That was, it was, so it might have been different than whoever's asking that question. For me, I was in the insurance world. I was selling supplemental insurance. I was an agency owner. I was getting 70%. So you can do the math, and it's like use a calculator and figure out this is the place to be because of the comp. Um, but I knew that I had to go sell. I had to go make money. And so I just asked Andrew what to do, and did that. And I kind of shared that with you. I think at first we got spent like $1,000 or so. I turned it in 10 grand. Um, but I knew that I had to add to it, so I did. But I just, dude, like I already worked, and I was leaving something I probably had, I don't know, probably 400 or 500 grand in residuals or something like that. Now, my accounts had to pay off. I was a captive agent. So there was a big risk there. That's the other thing. What was I leaving behind? But here's the thing, guys. You're either all in, or you're not. Don't, it's not a thing you play with. It's not something where you stick your foot in. The water's warm, jump in, is what I'm trying to say. And then if you're married, or you have somebody around you that maybe you're married, or maybe you have a, serious relationship, whatever, you got to have those conversations. And my wife knew it was going to be out of balance for a while. There really was no balance in the beginning, right? She knew I'd be home at some point to eat dinner, and she knew that she'd see me maybe a little bit more on the weekends. But I was going to prove her that this was going to get done, to the point now she never, like, she just knows. Like she's able to travel with me now if I need to go somewhere. She's my best friend. but there were some sacrifices for that 2 years. I don't even like sacrifice, more about changing your priorities for a period of time. Like my church, like my pastor understood that when I was able to give him a check because that was a goal. Okay. And that goes back to when I was a kid. That's a whole nother story. But there was lots of reasons why I worked hard. It wasn't just my family, guys. I mean, I truly want others to win. I truly wanted to impact people's lives. And so the reason I got in the insurance business was for that reason, to build residual income. And I felt like I could make a difference in this world. That's not changed. So for me, it was setting those boundaries with my kids, with my wife, and expectations up front. And I just went all in, right? And when you go all in and you invest, you have to give it as much time as it takes and work as hard as you can. If that's what you're trying to do, is build something to change your life. You can come here, still change your life, but some of you may not see what Easton saw, or maybe not see what Jake saw, or myself, or some of the others that say, man, I want a big agency. I want to make X amount of dollars. I want to change my life in a big way. It's not about the money. The money is not going to make you happy. I promise you. You need to be happy in your own skin where you're at, or you're not going to be happy when you have money. So that's where it starts. But for me, it's about serving people. So when I'm giving, I'm at my best. I feel way better giving and serving and working hard than I do if I'm lazy and doing nothing.
Well, yeah, dude,
Miserable to do nothing,
I think
honestly.
it's cool that vision can adjust too. I'll be the first one to admit, which I've talked about before, like I had a literal zero interest in doing this for anybody but myself at first because I just wanted to work for me. I didn't want to have to talk to anybody because I hated management at my corporate company. And I was like, I'm tired of dealing with all that stuff. Please do not ever ask me about recruiting again. And then sometimes you accidentally fall into it, and I was surrounded by, dude, I was literally talking to Zach every day, and he's like, building a giant company. And I was like, ooh, that actually doesn't sound terrible. And I talked to, dude, I'll never forget when I was talking to Mike Killabet, and he was like, oh, bonus check hit today. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he's like, oh, I built a company. So, they pay me 120 grand a month. And I was like, excuse me? And I was like, all right, well, that actually doesn't sound quite as terrible now that you're mentioning that part of the business. That's actually wouldn't be terrible. So, that's kind of how it's piqued interest, was like big financial change. And then if you go, it's kind of like the Mark Mead, like you serve the people and you help them, and then that equals the money. It's literally a universal win to build, which is probably like the coolest thing about what we do is you can actually help others and watch them progress while becoming financially free in the process, which is pretty cool. So I love that, dude. Okay. Any other the big witch, you guys got anything else you want him to tackle while we got him on here? Do a little open mic sesh.
Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. What's up, Jake?
What's up, man? Dude, can you talk about investing in your business early before you saw the return?
Yeah, I
With
think
staff members and stuff, right? Because I remember there was a time when you had like 4 or 5 recruiters. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
yeah, so when I had my highest point, I had 6 total staff. Um, so we started really building March. I came out of convention in February, did like 40, and then I don't remember what we did in March, but again, we were $1 million like October of that year. And I remember it just wasn't growing fast enough for me. So like when I had some extra money, I hired somebody else to staff to recruit. I remember telling Aaron, hey, call someone, put this on Facebook, and one of my old assistants applied right away. I said, call her and hire her. So I know she's good. All right, bring her in. And then another month went by or so, and I'm like, we need more. So I would do it. I wasn't scared because I'm not afraid of hard work. Right. I understood that if I took 500, that $500 would free me up to do other things. And I heard Sean say this in the beginning, if it's not paying you to do it, then have somebody else do it. Now, I'm not saying Aaron calling the carriers doesn't, it saves me money, right? But there's so many things that we're doing and we're saying, quote unquote, we're busy, and we could pay somebody a very nominal amount of money to do it for us. When you start, Gabby, I'd love to know what your number is, but she could probably take her hours, right? And figure out how much she makes an hour. It's probably pretty good. Okay. So if that hour, whatever it is, you start looking at those numbers. Why wouldn't you pay somebody to do the mundane stuff that drives you crazy? You know what I'm saying? Have them do it.
Sure.
Right? So I wasn't afraid of investment, Jake, because I had done it before. I'd lost money. I'd gained money. I've seen it, but I knew that in order for us to build an agency, I had to have other people around me to help me do stuff that I wasn't good at or didn't know how to do. Right? Recruiting I could do, but the more recruiters you had, the better. I had to have somebody contract. I could barely do contracting myself at that time. It's gotten better, a lot better. But how was I going to do that? I had to hire somebody to do it, right? I didn't want to call the carriers to check on the policies. I didn't want to have to mail out a cards. I hired somebody to do all those things. Now we have a lot of things, like mailbox power and different things that we can use, but we didn't have that stuff back then. So, Jake, I hope that answered your question, but I just wasn't afraid of investing in myself because that's really what I was doing. I was betting on me, right? And, dude, you either believe in yourself or you don't. Now I think you get better at believing in yourself because you're going to fail. It's part of the process, right? So I've failed so many times that we became successful. I mean, I'm just saying because I wasn't afraid. Imagine how many doors I knocked on and they didn't answer. Not how many doors I knocked on, I got slammed in the face. It happened. They were rude to me for years and years and years. And all I got to do now is pick up the phone. That's crazy. And all I got to do is get one that's willing to talk to me for a few minutes, right? It's just a timing thing. Some of you get in your head about, people get in their head about, oh, this person did this, and I couldn't get him out. Dude, keep calling. Like, I never stopped. When I was in the field, guys, I'm just being honest with you. It's very rare, and I'm sure these guys are like that too, Jake and East, because I know they are. It's very rare that I came home not making money. Very rare. I can't, because I was going to stop at a convenience store. That's what I knew. I was going to make a phone call, or I had 5 or 6 people that I'd worked on the week before that I knew. And I was going to find somebody to buy something that day before I walked in that door if I could. So the same thing comes here. If you're done it, you have your days scheduled out. You're starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. You're going to be done at 6 or whatever, and you got to work till 8. Then work till 8. You got to do it every day the rest of your life, but that might be the day you need to push through to prove to yourself, you know what, I got this. And even if you don't make that sale, that extra hour or two that you put in will make you better the next day. And always remember this, it's in the Bible. I'm just saying, we plant enough good seeds, it's going to come back to us. It's the same way with sales. I promise you, day in and day out, I would go out there in the field when I was in the field, before when I knocked on doors, when I dial the phone today, whatever it is. If you're consistent with the activities and have the right attitude, it will happen. It may not happen in your time, but it will happen, right? Some of you, Gabby's been here how long? I'm just using her name because I remember she had a big month.
4 months.
How many?
4 months.
Right. So it's like, what is she doing different? She's probably working her tail off. I know she is, but she's probably being very consistent. She probably has a schedule. She probably has structure, all those things. She's not doing 80K without it. In my mind, now she may give us another secret that I don't know, but she's probably very disciplined. When she starts her first dial, she probably has an idea when she's going to end, but that doesn't mean she's not going to take that next appointment if she needs to, right? If she's got to work on a Saturday, she's probably doing it. If she's got to make a phone call on Sunday, she's probably doing it, not thinking about it. It just happens, right? So when you're in the game and in the groove like that, you're gonna. But again, if there's some things in there that she's doing at her level that she can have somebody else help her, then I would definitely take that money and get somebody to help me with those things, especially if it's taking me away from what I'm good at.
Yeah, I've never heard a top producer tell me that they are extremely lazy and have a really good skill set, and so that's how they sell 80 grand a month. So I think it's pretty much the exact opposite, where like I'm terrible at first. I build up skill set development with time, repetitions, put in a ton of hours, and then once the skill set development meets the hours, that's where you have these 60, 70, 80K months. It does not come from, I actually barely work at all and had 2 huge clients, thank Christ. Like that doesn't really, sorry for saying that, Dave. I know that you're not a big fan of that one. Sorry about that. But I just don't hear that, dude. It doesn't work like that. You have to put in time, repetitions, be willing to fail and keep showing up. And you have been a machine. You're like my we need to cut a video because every door-to-door dude, when they're on like year 3, I need them to hear that you did this for 19 years and they need to know that there's a better way. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life, Dave. I didn't know you did it for that long. I knew you didn't do insurance stuff, but hammering doors uninvited for 19 years might be the craziest thing I've ever heard. It makes sense why you're so good at this.
And I
So
knocked on the doors to convince people they were going to get cancer. I sold cancer policies, guys. You don't have to convince nobody of anything. They're going to die. Every single person we talk to is going to die. Just remember that. It's like toilet paper. We got to all have it, right? I'm just saying, like, but not everybody believed that cancer could happen to them or whatever. I had to convince them of that, or they had to have an accident or heart or a stroke problem, whatever, whatever I was selling. But cancer is how we got in the door. So, like, if they were in a bad mood or somebody died, I mean, there's all these weird situations you run into, but I had to show them that cancer could happen to them. They know they're going to die. It isn't like you got to convince them of that. At least I'd hope not.
yeah, dude, it's a much different game here when you have like a warm leads based system. So, well, hey, we're 45 deep here, Dave. If you want to leave us with anything else, I really appreciate your time. Obviously, you've been a staple of like hustle and hard work and success that, I look to. We started actually really, really close together. And then you put it on me pretty good there for a few years. So we're still chasing you down a little bit, but I appreciate you as a big piece of inspiration and motivation for everybody. Is there any last thing that you want to add on here before I cut you loose?
Well, I think you guys already know this with Jake and Easton and Zach. You guys got great leadership. You got great people. And always remember that. Don't take that for granted. I never take Andrew for granted. I never take Sean for granted. Andrew's my direct upline. Um, but I would say this, we talked about this earlier, but I just wanted to tell you, if you look at Kobe, for example, and for you guys don't know that story or any of those guys, and you probably hear this on social media, I get it, but I'm just reiterating it for you one more time. That extra hour you get up in the morning, that extra hour in the evening, if you do that consistently over time, I'm not saying look next to you, look at the people that are doing what you want to do and figure out what they're doing, right? Which is what you're, like Gabby's doing as an example. I keep going back to her because that name came up. But every hour, think about it. If you, for the next year, if you get up 1 hour earlier, start adding that number up, right? But Kobe, just real quick, and if you hadn't heard this story, but when during basketball season right before, they would always have two practices, like most teams, right? And I think they were at 9 in the morning and like 3 in the afternoon typically, or something like that. Well, he would be up at 4 and get one in. So think about that. If he's the only one in the NBA doing that, he was naturally going to be better than the rest of them. He did it year after year after year after year, one practice ahead of all of them, right? And some of the guys probably couldn't get show up, even though you paid them a bunch of money. But that's the difference, guys. You want to get ahead, that's what you do. Look at yourself and find out where you can find another hour or two that other people aren't using. It's probably in the morning. If you're getting up, I don't know what time you get up, but if you're getting up at 7, back it up to 6 and see what happens. If it's 6, back it up to 5. I'm just telling you. Number one, you think, man, I need to sleep. No, you don't. Like, you're going to get plenty, right? And it's not forever. Remember that. But that's what I give you. Just share with your heart. I'm going to say that all day and hustle like there's nobody's life depending on it but you, because it is you. And then if you can look at yourself in the mirror at the end of every day and know what you gave it your very best and things didn't work out like you wanted, guess what? Get after it again tomorrow, be consistent, and then call your coach, whether it be Easton or Jake, and say, man, don't use word, I had a day. Here's what I think I did right. Here's what I think I did wrong. Instead of complaining, right? Can you help me? Here's what I did. Here's how many calls. And if you give them that information, which goes back to the question you had earlier about tracking, then you can get better help in that way. But they can't help you if they don't know the story, the true story. So you got to give them the truth. Okay. And guys, if you didn't work hard that day, then call them and tell them, dude, I was in my head. Be honest. It's better to be honest so they can coach you the right way. Otherwise, they're coaching you the wrong way, if that makes sense. So be honest with yourself and be honest with the coach.
I love it, dude. No bad days, just hard days. So, well,
That's right.
Dave, thank you.
God
Thank
bless
you
you
so
guys.
much for hopping on, and I'll see you here just a couple months, dude. I'll see you
Can't wait.
at the convention. So I appreciate you again.
Savages down here, man. Down here. You guys are awesome, man. Appreciate you guys. If I can ever do anything for you,
Yeah,
just
take it easy with that, Chris. Good Lord. All right, dude. I'll see you guys. See you guys
all
next
right.